The rain hammered down in thick sheets, the wind howling through the trees like a restless spirit. It was a miserable night, the kind that made people grateful for a warm home and a hot meal. I had just finished dinner and was settling onto the couch with a book when something heavy hit my front porch with a dull thud. I frowned, setting the book down. It wasn't the usual sound of branches snapping or the wind throwing debris around. It was different, solid, as if something had collapsed right outside my door. Cautiously, I stood and made my way to the entrance, unlocking the door and pulling it open. Cold air rushed in, biting at my skin. At first, I saw nothing but the dark, rain-slicked wood of the porch. Then, just beyond the threshold, a figure was crumpled on the ground. My breath caught. She was a woman, not human. Her skin was pale, almost silvery, glistening under the dim porch light. Her long violet hair clung to her face, soaked through, her body trembling violently. She was barely conscious, her eyes, large and glowing gold, half-lidded as she tried and failed to focus on me. She was starving. I could see it in the way her body looked too light, her breath too shallow. She tried to push herself up, but her arms gave out. Help! Her voice was weak, barely audible over the rain. I didn't hesitate. I lunged forward, crouching down and scooping her into my arms. She was so light, too light for someone her size. Her skin was cold to the touch, and when I lifted her, she let out a soft, exhausted sigh, as if simply being held was a relief. I carried her inside, kicking the door shut behind me. The warmth of my home enveloped us, a stark contrast to the freezing rain outside. She shivered in my arms, her body instinctively curling against me for heat. Gently, I laid her down on the couch. Her wet clothes clung to her, offering little protection from the chill still gripping her form. She needed warmth, food, something to bring life back into her. I grabbed a thick blanket from the nearby chair and draped it over her, carefully tucking it around her fragile frame. As I did, I noticed her breathing slowing, becoming steadier. She wasn't awake, but she wasn't slipping away either. That was good. Kneeling beside the couch, I brushed a few strands of damp hair from her face. Her features were delicate, otherworldly, but there was a softness to them, a quiet beauty even in her exhaustion. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know where she had come from, or why she had ended up on my doorstep. But as I sat there, watching over her, one thing became clear. I couldn't turn her away. Morning sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the living room. The quiet hum of the heater filled the space, replacing the harsh sounds of last night's storm. I had barely slept, keeping an ear out for any movement from the woman on my couch. She was still wrapped in the blanket, her silvery skin now warm to the touch instead of icy cold. Her breathing was slow and steady. She looked peaceful, safe. The smell of breakfast filled the air as I set a plate down on the coffee table. Scrambled eggs, toast, and a cup of tea. Simple, but warm. A soft sound made me glance over. She was waking up. Her fingers twitched against the fabric of the blanket, her breathing shifting as her golden eyes slowly blinked open. She stared at the ceiling for a moment, disoriented, before her gaze moved to me. She tensed slightly, her muscles going rigid beneath the covers. "It's okay," I said gently. "You're safe." Her expression flickered with confusion, then hesitation. Her golden eyes darted to the food on the table. I could see the hunger in her gaze, the way her body instinctively leaned forward before she caught herself and stopped. "You can eat," I encouraged, nudging the plate closer. "It's for you." For a moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she sat up, keeping the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her violet hair fell messily around her face as she reached out, taking a piece of toast between delicate fingers. She hesitated again. Then, she took a bite. The moment the food hit her tongue, her eyes widened. She let out the softest, most contented sound I had ever heard, somewhere between a hum and a sigh. It was adorable. She quickly ate the rest, her hunger taking over. I watched, fascinated, as she took small, careful bites at first but then abandoned all restraint, devouring everything on the plate with quiet determination. When she finally finished, she exhaled a deep breath and leaned back against the couch, placing a hand over her stomach as if savoring the warmth of the meal. I smiled. Better. She looked at me, then nodded. Yes. Her voice was soft, slightly raspy, but clearer than last night. Then, she placed her hand on her chest. Draw. I tilted my head. Draw. She nodded again. Then, to my surprise, she hesitated before reaching out and tapping my chest with 2 fingers. I chuckled. I'm Rian. Rian, she repeated, testing the name on her tongue. It sounded different when she said it. Warmer, almost like she was holding something precious. A quiet moment passed between us. She looked at me with something unreadable in her golden eyes before finally lowering her hand. I didn't know where she had come from. I didn't know what had happened to bring her to my doorstep, half-starved and alone. But I knew one thing. She wasn't just a stranger anymore. The days passed, and Dra slowly regained her strength. At first, she was cautious, moving carefully around my home as if afraid she might break something. But as time went on, she became more comfortable, her movements more fluid and natural. She was learning, adapting, and, in some ways, she was thriving. She had a quiet fascination with the simplest things. She would watch me make coffee in the morning, eyes wide as the dark liquid poured into the mug, inhaling the steam like it was something magical. She marveled at the way water turned hot in the kettle, staring in silent wonder as the bubbles formed and rose to the surface. Even the soft flicker of a candle seemed to mesmerize her, as if fire itself was something foreign to her world. It was endearing. She also liked to help. Though she didn't always get things right, her determination never wavered. The first time she tried to fold laundry, she got so frustrated that she just wrapped herself up in a blanket instead, looking at me with an almost pout-like expression. The sight of her tangled up in the fabric had nearly made me laugh. But it was in the quiet moments that I noticed something else, something deeper. One evening, as I sat by the fireplace reading, she settled down beside me. Normally, she kept a bit of distance, always giving me space. But tonight was different. Tonight, she sat close enough that our arms almost touched. For a while, neither of us spoke. The fire crackled, filling the silence with warmth. Then, after a moment, I felt something, her fingers brushing against mine, hesitant but deliberate. I looked at her. She wasn't looking at me, her gaze fixed on the fire, but there was a quiet softness in her expression. In my world, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, we do not touch like this. I frowned slightly. You mean holding hands? She nodded, finally turning to meet my gaze. Physical closeness is rare. It is not needed. But I like this. Her fingers curled slightly around mine, warm and delicate. It feels safe. Something about the way she said it made my chest tighten. I gave her hand a small squeeze. Then you can hold my hand whenever you want. Dra's golden eyes flickered with something unreadable before she smiled, a slow, genuine smile that reached all the way to her eyes. She didn't let go of my hand for the rest of the night. As the days turned to weeks, Dra became a part of my life in ways I hadn't expected. She wasn't just a guest in my home, she was family. She had started calling me that, too. It happened one evening when I was making dinner. I had just set the plates down when she walked up behind me, her usual quiet presence making it easy to forget she was there until she spoke. Rian, she said softly. I turned, smiling. Yeah. Her golden eyes studied me, something uncertain flickering in their depths. Then, in a voice both hesitant and hopeful, she whispered, You are family? The words hit me harder than I expected. I had no idea what she had lost before she arrived at my doorstep that night. She never spoke about where she came from, and I never pushed. But I had seen it in the way she looked at the world, how she marveled at simple comforts, how she hesitated before taking food, as if expecting it to be taken away. She had been alone for a long time. I swallowed, my chest tightening. Yeah, I said, my voice quiet but firm. Your family. Draw's breath hitched, and for a moment, she just stared at me. Then, without warning, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. She had never hugged me before. She had never even come this close unless it was accidental. But now, she was holding me tightly, her body warm and trembling slightly against mine. I exhaled and hugged her back, my hands resting gently on her shoulders. She wasn't just some lost traveler anymore. She wasn't just someone I had helped. She was mine, and I was hers. That night, she didn't sleep in the guest room. She curled up on the couch beside me, her head resting against my shoulder, her breathing soft and steady. I didn't move. I didn't need to. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone. And neither did she.